morning. I'd like to welcome you to our digital classroom. I'm Jerry Winslet along with Kevin Binkley. And today we're going to be talking about the MXI, and we're going to talk a little bit about the XI. And to kind of break things down on how we're going to do today, we're going to go over to a water heater that's already installed in our studio, and we're going to talk about some of the features and benefits. We're going to talk about how it works. Talk about troubleshooting, some things to think about on installation when you're going out on a job site. And then we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and do the hands-on section. It should be a very interesting show. I hope you get a lot out of this. You doing all right?
Doing great.
Are you ready to go ahead and get going? All right, we're going to go over to the water heater and get started. All right. Okay, so this is the MXI, and this is the water heater we have here in the studio. We also have the XI, which a lot of people, if you're familiar with working on these water heaters, they're out there in the field. But let's talk about the overall the water heater itself. I know the MXI has a little bit of changes from the XI, but overall this is a very efficient water heater. And we're talking 95% plus thermal efficiency. That's how much heat we're creating actually goes into the water. Let's talk about that and some of the different models that we have to choose from.
Well, actually, we can actually achieve up to 98% efficiency. The way that we're achieving this is that we have a downfire burner system. Mm-hmm. Basically, all the components are on the top of the water heater, okay, the blower, the burner. And what it does is it actually takes and it burns down. It goes straight down. A lot of people have the misconception that it comes straight back out, but it does not.
Right.
And it actually does a U-bend and goes all the way back up to the top of this heater and then spirals around the outside edges of the tank, and then it comes out down at the bottom of our exhaust. So basically, like on a standard 199 or 250, which is going to be the majority of what you're going to see, you've got 40 feet of 2.5-inch pipe scrubbing off all that heat and putting it into the water.
Yeah, and you were talking about we're top mounted. That means our burner's on the top, our blower's on the top, all the components are on the top. So we're firing and forcing that down, going back, and then like Kevin said, it comes back up and then spirals around the outside of the inside of the tank. And we keep those flue gases in there long enough, and that's what that transfer. The longer we keep those flue gases in there, the more heat we're going to transfer, and that's why we're able to get that 98 or 95 plus up to 98% thermal efficiency. It is a workhorse. This is the top of the line water heater at our company. I mean, this is it. This is what we put in, and a lot of retros we use this just plug and play. I mean, really, you just put it in there, hook the venting and gas up and water to it, and it's ready to go.
Right. I mean, it vents with very inexpensive Schedule 40 PVC. The water lines you have to obviously have for any water heater, and then the gas line, and you're ready to go, and then obviously a power supply.
Okay. So yeah, that was another thing. We do have to plug it in, and we use power on this one because we have a lot of different controls and a blower. So on the controls, it's pretty neat because it's all eye level. Everything's up here where you can see it. And the control is unique that we can navigate it. It's all in plain English. It's really easy to understand, and it will tell you what's going on with it.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, 80 to 90% of the time, the number one tool that you actually need to work on this unit is your finger and knowing how to navigate this control. Because just to reinforce your point, this control, if you read and do what it tells you to do, you're going to get the problem right almost every time. I mean, basically, it's like having the service handbook built into the control.
Right. That's a wonderful feature. And another thing, too, let's talk about the different models that we have. I know we've got a 199. This is probably our workhorse. This is the most common water heater we have out there. That's up to 199,000 BTU that we're putting into the water. What other models do we have to choose from?
Well, we have 120,000 BTUs. It's a 60-gallon. And then we jump up to 100-gallon, 150,000 BTU. Then next is our 100-gallon, 199, and then the 250. Next up, we're going to be what we put it in the basket is of the 300 through the 500,000 BTU models.
Okay.
They're 100-gallon tanks, and actually 119-gallon tanks, excuse me. And they are from 300 to 500,000 BTUs.
So you got a lot to choose from, and that's why this is the most common and our top of the line. We've got many different water heaters that you can put for almost any application that's out there. All right, so this is the MXI, and a lot of XI water heaters are out there. That's the version before this one. And there's some subtle differences and some differences that we've changed to kind of upgrade this water heater. We listen to people in the field with their comments and their suggestions, and we've came out with this MXI. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk about the differences between the two. Obviously, the tank and the helical heat exchanger, how we're transferring that heat really didn't change much.
Right.
But there are some differences. And the first one we want to talk about is this water heater is a modulating water heater. And let's talk about modulation and how that helps the contractor and the customer.
Well, modulation, one of the big benefits it gives us, one is it gives us some increased efficiency.
Right.
So where the older XI, you know, it was on or off. So therefore it was firing at 100% or it was satisfied and it wasn't running at all. The way this guy works is similar. It still will run at 100%, but once you get within 8 degrees of set point, it's going to start modulating.
Okay.
Okay. So the big benefit that gives to the contractor and the customer is a lot less wear and tear on components. So once you start getting close to that set point, based off demand, you could actually hear, you know, that blower ramping up and down, you know, basically trying to keep up with the demand. Because let's say you're in a restaurant and, you know, you're at the end of a peak period, well, the thing starts to modulate down once you get within that 8-degree dead band. Well, let's say the cook goes and does a load of dishes.
Right.
Right. You know, then you're going to all of a sudden hear that fan start to ramp back up. Also, too, after 8 minutes in modulation mode, it's going to go into a condensate blowdown, and it's going to run at high fire for 45 seconds.
And that's to get the condensate out? Is that to push it all out?
That's right, because we're going to be so efficient in that modulation mode, we got to blow in that downfire portion of the heat exchanger. We have to actually blow that condensation.
So we're probably producing more condensation whenever we're in that lower that lower BTU input and you know the low fire type of situation. So we're going to have to push it all out by ramping it back up to 199,000 BTU in this case to get all that condensation out. Now modulation is great because all we're doing, you know, like Kevin said, we're ramping the gases down and the air-fuel mixture down once we get closer to that set point, once we get within 8 degrees. So you're going to hear the fan go down and come back up depending on the load. Now, we got calls on that at the beginning because they were saying, hey, this fan's going up and down, up and down. It's just doing what it's supposed to be doing.
That's right, especially in retrofit applications where, let's say, you have a bank of heaters and let's say they go to replace one of the XIs and they go put the MXI in next to it. Well, you know, they look so similar, but the other one's doing one thing, and this one, you hear that fan going up and down, and they perceive that to be a problem, when in reality, no, that's just the heater's doing what it's designed to do.
Yeah, and it's a great feature, and it's going to save the life of the water heater. It's going to help with the life of the water heater, especially if it's sized properly and put in the right application. This water heater should last a long time. All right, so that's modulation, and that's a very big difference from the older style. It's a good big plus with the new water heaters. The next thing I want to talk about is the on-off switch, or it's not on-off anymore. It's an enable-disable switch. Let's talk about that.
Right. Well, the big difference here is when you turn to disabled versus the predecessor, the XI, the power is still on. This screen will still be lit up. The reason for that is because we have powered anodes. We don't have consumable anodes, so we need the unit to be powered at all times. So just a service note, if you're up here and you're working on one of these units, the best thing for you to do would be to turn the breaker off, or if it's ran to a plug, unplug it before you start to work on it. That way that you actually do have power disabled to the unit or turned off. But when you get done doing your work, you need to make sure that obviously that you have the breaker turned back on and the unit plugged back up and turned into enabled. That way the unit will fire, because it's easy to make the mistake of not turning it back on to enable, because it's just, that screen's still on.
Yeah, the lights are on and everything's on, and that is a difference from the previous model, where when you turn that switch off, it was off. The lights were off on the unit. So Yeah, it's just an enable disable switch. You'll be able to see the water here. There'll be lights. Everything will be lit up. You'll probably see the thermometer because this kind of walks through your sequence of operation as it's running. And just tell you what status it's in. But when you turn it to the disabled section, you could probably go back and look in the menu at some previous error codes and things like that whenever it's in disabled. And that may be an advantage when you're in the field, instead of, disconnecting the power to it, being able to turn the water heater off and look at what it's done in the past. So that could be a plus in the field.
Yeah, you do have the capability of actually going into the fault history, and it will show you the last 9 faults, and they'll actually be, stamped as far as the time, like it happened 24 hours ago, or it happened 8 hours and 15 minutes ago, and it will store the last 9 faults for up to 30 days, and then it will roll over into a larger bucket called fault occurrence, where it will store up to 255.
Oh, wow.
For every single potential error on there. So, if you go into fault occurrence and, you've got 255 low gas errors, probably you should start off by checking your inlet gas pressure.
You might want to look at the gas.
and see what's going on there.
All right, we're going to get into the menu and the control a little bit later in the show. But the next thing I want to talk about is our #1 service item. We've actually changed it. And I've actually got one from the old XI. It's the igniter. We made a change on the igniter.
Right. This is the way, actually, it comes shipped this way between 2 pieces of styrofoam. And it's a silicon carbide igniter, which means it's glass. Which, in other words, it's going to be one of the more serviceable items because, it's fragile. This is what you're going to see a lot of times when you see low igniter current on the old unit. And, when you see this, this is going to, tell you that you need to replace the igniter.
Right.
So what we did is we changed to a direct spark.
I've got one right here.
So trade with me here.
There's that. I'll take that.
All right. And instead of, heating up and glowing, because we had to make sure that hot surface igniter was hot enough, too, to light the gases, we've now gone to a direct spark style unit. And it's 14,000 volts DC. It's a lot like the spark plug on your car. The boot and everything even looks the same. So it's rare that you'll ever have any issue at all with direct spark. And even if you did, most of the time it's very serviceable in the field, because basically what happens is contaminants build up on this spark and you might have to pull it out and clean it off. Okay. As long as this porcelain's not chipped or broke, we have no issue. Right. Or just due to heat degradation over time, you may see it spread out outside the specified gap of the 1/8 of an inch, and it's not lighting off just because of that. Okay. Otherwise, this is a very,
durable,
very durable and robust system for ignition.
Yeah, because we've used these in the past. So it's direct spark. It's going to spark. It's going to dump the gas into the chamber. It's going to spark, and you're going to have a few seconds to see that flame. So it's going to spark to this wire here, correct?
Yeah, it's going to spark right across here, and then as your air and your gas comes in on that burner, okay, once it comes out, it's going to light, that fuel in the air, and it's going to shut off at that point once it senses flame, and it's going to run all the way until it heats up. Okay,
that's a great feature and a great upgrade. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is when we put these water heaters in, when they're installing these water heaters, a lot of times they push them all the way up against the wall. And before, we've changed the exhaust and we brought it around front, which is a big plus. Let's talk about that and how that helps the contractor and the customer.
Oh, well, this is huge because, first of all, this unit's certified as a zero clearance appliance. So, the predecessor with the XI, the exhaust was in the back. Right. So the first thing that they would do is they would shove it into a corner, all right, because it's zero clearance. Well, it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when the condensate drain plugged up that you would have to access that and clean it out. And in a lot of cases, we had guys that had to go and cut a hole in an adjacent wall just to unplug a condensate drain, or they had to pull the unit out completely just to get to it. So what we did is we moved that exhaust to the front. And when we did, we had to make it a lot more durable because we knew that, you know, it was going to get hit with stuff because
Right.
it's not in the back, it's not protected. So, you know, we had to beef it up, and we went to this cast aluminum elbow.
So we had like a PVC elbow before.
Right, it was a PVC elbow, and this guy's a cast aluminum. We've been using it in the European market for several years,
Yeah.
so it's not like this. It's the first time we've used it. One of the things that's going to be different is the old Cyclone, the XI. It would come from the factory with a looped trap. Okay, that way you weren't dumping flue gases out into the room. This one's trapped right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to run a trap when you go to your floor drain, okay? And then what you're gonna do in a replacement job, this is the way it's gonna come from the factory. You're not gonna have the Tygon tubing and the barb fitting anymore. If it's a replacement, you just pull the one off the old one, put it in the new one, except you don't wanna loop it and just run it straight to a floor drain, okay? Or you're gonna have to get, you know, a 1/2-inch barb fitting and some Tygon tubing and run it to a drain.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And remember, it's trapped on the inside. We get calls sometimes asking if they need to trap it again, because usually on the XIs they had that trap that was already on the water heater looped. So you don't need to double trap this. That could cause a block outlet switch to occur if it blocks up enough. So that's a great feature, and we reinforce that because people do. They'll hit it with a cart. They'll hit it. You know, kick it with their foot if they're cleaning around it. I mean, It happens from time to time. The next thing I want to talk about is pressure switches. We still have pressure switches on this water heater.
Right.
We still have pressure switches, but we've changed. They still work the same way, but we've kind of made it a little bit easier for the people in the field. Let's talk about that.
Well, yeah. First of all, let's go back to the XI and talk about that. A lot of people had, you know, the misconception that because all the switches looked alike, that they serve the same purpose. When no, they all serve their own unique individual purpose on the heater. So what we did is we color-coded the new pressure switches. So let's talk about that a little bit. We'll start with the blue label, okay? If you aren't getting enough oxygen, Jerry, what's going to happen?
I'm going to turn blue.
So this is your blocked
and
intake.
die.
This is your blocked intake switch. Another way, I don't know if we can get a close-up of this here, but if you see,
we got a good shot.
It's normally closed. In common, you know that's a normally closed switch. All right, and if the barb is on the negative side of the switch, you know it's going to open on a negative pressure.
Yeah.
So that's just another way to identify it.
Yeah. See, there's a negative on this side. And then you've got a positive on the other side. Negative right there. Oh, there it is. Negative on that side. And then there'll be a plus right there. And I don't know if you can see that. But if the barb is on the bottom here, on the black part, that would be a positive pressure switch. And this is obviously a negative pressure switch. Whoop, knocked that off. Sorry. Let's talk about another one.
All right.
Which one you got?
Green, okay, green means go.
Yeah.
This is our blower prover switch.
Okay.
You know, for us to go, we have to make sure that the blower is actually running. It's a normally open switch, and it closes on a positive pressure. Now, the only difference with this switch compared to the XI is if the contact's ever opened, okay, it would shut the unit down on a blower prover failure.
Right.
We're only monitoring this one first to make sure that it's open before the unit comes out of standby and right after the fan comes on. The reason for that is we are a modulating unit now.
Right.
So when you're going all the way down and you're within that 8-degree dead band, you could be below the make-break point of this switch and it could open up. So what we're doing is we're actually monitoring the RPM or the tach pulses off of the fan, and as long as we see that's correct, it just ignores the fact if this switch opens back up afterwards in that point in the sequence of operation.
So if you're in heater status while the water heater's running, you'll see if it starts to modulate, you might see that blower prover switch to open while the water heater's working. So we're only monitoring. We just want to make sure it closes at the beginning when the blower comes on.
That's right. All we're doing is making sure that it closes during pre-purge, and then after that, you know, it ignores it, especially when it goes into modulation mode. If it opens up, it's no big deal.
Okay. And remember, on the XI, it had to stay closed the whole time. Remember that.
Had to.
Okay. Next one.
So red means stop. So if our exhaust is blocked, you have a blocked exhaust switch.
That's right.
So, the failure code you would get with this guy would actually be, blocked exhaust. So, if you cycle the power and the fan comes on and it goes right back to a blocked exhaust, the problem's not the switch. It's going to be that your exhaust is actually blocked up. So, and if you notice also as well, we're a normally closed switch, and the barb is on the positive side. So it's going to open on a positive pressure and shut the unit down on a blocked exhaust. So what we've really tried to do is streamline it to where the guys in the field can identify the switch much easier just by the color codes versus, well, they all just look the same.
Right.
They all have the same label.
Yeah. All right. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the control board. Used to, whenever people were out in the field and they had to carry a control board for each model that we have. Let's talk about that. We've kind of streamlined this as well, didn't we?
Yeah, this was another big deal. See, for the older XI, you had to carry a control board for every different model. And we didn't really have that much success with that. So a lot of times, if there was a control board problem and it wasn't a standard like a 199 board or something that, they would actually keep one up, they were waiting to get the control board, all right? So what we did, all right, this is the new control that comes on the unit. This is your control board. One control board will now fit all. All you have to do is you'll carry, let's see the other board.
Oh,
this is
sure.
what you'll get shipped. If you'll hold that up for me there. All right, all you're going to do is pull this configuration key out right here of the old board, plug it into the new one. All right, it's going to flash it and tell it which model it actually is, and then you're back up in biz. So you can keep one control board on your truck and service the entire line now. Some of the other differences is we actually have a transformer that's replaceable here, and we also have a power distribution board right here.
Cool.
So the big thing to take away from this one is you only have to stock one control board.
Yeah,
now,
that's wonderful.
And you can work on any of the Cyclone
So we
family.
just take this key out of whatever water heater's in there and put it into the new board. So all we have to do is carry a couple boards on the truck.
Yeah, and after that you're good to go.
Wow, that's a big upgrade. That's great. All right. All right. So let's see where we're at here. All right, next thing I want to talk about, because I got to figure out, I'm not like, I can't remember everything. So the next thing I want to talk about is some installation things that we want to keep in mind whenever we're going out and having to install these water heaters. Let's get some tips. Let's start with venting and some installation tips we might want to think about when they're out there in the field.
Well, venting and gas are the two biggest installation areas that we run into. Like a lot of times, like on a 199, your actual gas connection is going to be like 3/4 of an inch.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can run 3/4 of an inch 50 feet across the building and then it will actually operate.
Right.
There's tables in the manual that says if you go this far, this is what size main gas line you have to use. So, if you're 50 feet and you're 250,000 BTUs, the minimum pipe size you're going to be able to run is 1 inch all the way to the unit, and then reduce it down. Another common mistake we run into with the venting is, for example, on the 120 through 250s, you can use 3-inch or 4-inch PVC.
Yeah.
Well, it also says for 3-inch you're good for 50 developed feet. That's with no 90s.
Okay.
And with 4-inch you're good for 120. Well, what we run into, especially in new installs, if they run too many 90s or something like that, that could actually give you a blocked intake or blocked exhaust. So.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's some good tips to keep in mind whenever you're going out there on jobs. Is there anything with the water piping that we need to think about? I mean, I know we're how many outlets or openings are on this water heater?
Well, on this one we only have, 2 openings. We have the cold water inlet, which is at the bottom. The hot water outlet is going to be on the top. The common piping error we run into, if you look at our manuals, we have like 20 pages of piping diagrams, and I would suggest you make it look like one of those. But it's series piping.
Right.
What they'll do is they'll bring the hot out of one heater and feed the cold to the next, and then take the hot out of the second heater and feed the rest of the building.
Yeah.
Well, that first heater, which is saying all the cold water, it's running all the time. and the second one is, acting as a storage tank, and
Right.
it won't even run until the other heater is completely depleted of
Exactly.
water. It doesn't even kick on. Another common, water side installation error we run into is guys not putting expansion tanks in or not charging them to the water pressure they have coming into the building before they install them.
Yeah, that's a big one, though. I mean, it's properly pressurized, properly sized thermal expansion tank is something that they really need, because if you're in a closed system, and closed meaning, you've got check valves, and that incoming water can't go back out. When it starts to thermal expansion starts to take place, and that water's got to go somewhere. The expansion's got to go somewhere. So a properly sized, properly pressurized thermal expansion tank is key. And like you said, you need to know what the incoming water is to the building. What the pressure is, and pressurize that thermal expansion tank before you install it. Because if you put it up there and you install it and then pressurize it, it actually does pretty much nothing.
Doesn't do you any good at all.
Yeah. So it's a good idea to do that before you install it. And you want to know what if your pressure is fluctuating, a good PRV would be, you'll need one of those to keep that pressure regulated, so it's not spiking up and down. And you need to know what the highest pressure is too. So properly pressurized, properly sized thermal expansion tank is very, very important with any installation.
Right. And in every commercial application, if there's a backflow on the building, your system's closed.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's right.
Almost all commercial applications are going to be closed, so you're going to need an expansion tank.
All right, the next thing I want to talk about is troubleshooting. We're going to talk a little bit about service on this water heater. And before we get into it, you already told me one of the things that you really need to work on this water heater, and that's your finger.
Right.
But having the right tools for the job is critically important with this. And we're recommending a manometer and a multimeter.
Right.
Digital.
Well, for manometer, we would recommend the UEI EM 151. This will pretty much work across the product line. We've only got a couple of products that require a differential manometer, but they're low volume. You're not going to probably see a whole lot of them, but mainly that's going to be to our potable water boiler line. You would maybe have to have a differential then, but otherwise this is going to work across the product line.
Okay.
And then you've got a UEI G2 Phoenix 389 series. This will work across the product line, period, as far as for almost all the testing we're going to ask you to do. It's got a non-contact voltage test. I mean, it's got a backlight. I mean, you can read microamps and amperage at the same time. I mean, so it's got some pretty cool features. There is some other ones that look the same, like the 369 looks the same. It's a great meter as well, but the only difference is if you're working on equipment, it doesn't have a magnet. So if I'm down here trying to do something on that, it's not going to, stick to the appliance.
You'll have to have a third hand.
Yes,
Kevin.
a third hand, absolutely.
And most of us don't have that, so yeah, having the magnet is great. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk about some of the top service tips. Some of the things that we've got call centers in this building where we're at the factory, and we kind of know what's going on in the field, what happens with our water heaters, and we've kind of narrowed it down to 5 different things that we might see with water heaters, or 5 or 6 different things. And actually, what we're going to do now is, I forgot one thing. Hey, one thing is the QR code, which when we get back from talking about the service items, what we'll do is I'll show you the QR code. But we're going to go ahead and play some videos about all 5 different service tips that you might experience. And when we come back, we'll talk to you about that QR code, and then we'll go over the control display. All right? So be right back. The Enable-Disable switch is located right below the display. It must be in the Enable position to allow the water heater to operate. It's not an on-off switch and does not turn off power to the control board. Press Disable to prevent the unit from operating, or press Enable to allow the water heater to operate. The Enable-Disable switch is separate from the Enable-Disable circuit, which is often connected to a timer or a building management system. The blower prover switch is a normally open switch that closes when the blower starts to prove that the blower is running. A blower prover failure occurs when the blower prover switch is closed before the blower runs. Set the enable-disable switch to disable. The blower will not operate when the unit is disabled, so the blower prover switch should be open. Using a multimeter set to continuity, check the terminals on the switch. You should not hear a beep, meaning that the switch is open. If you do hear a beep, the switch is closed. Replace the blower prover switch. A blower operation not detected error occurs when the blower prover switch does not detect that the blower is running. Before the blower runs, the blower prover switch is open, and when the blower starts, air pressure from the blower closes the switch, proving that the blower is running. Visually inspect the switch. Make sure that the electrical connections are clean and tight, and the pressure tube is connected and not cracked. Clear the fault by pressing disable, then enable. Verify that the blower is running when the fan icon appears. If the blower doesn't start when the fan icon appears, check the blower and make sure that the connections are clean and tight. If the blower does run, clean any blockage in the pressure tube and clean out the sample port on the blower housing. Make sure the tube is in good condition and is tightly connected. If you still get this error, replace the blower prover switch. A blocked exhaust error can be caused by a restriction in the exhaust pipe, high wind conditions, or a faulty blocked exhaust pressure switch. Clear the fault by pressing disable, then enable. If the error comes back before the blower starts, the blocked exhaust pressure switch may be disconnected or is faulty. Make sure the connections are clean and tight. Set your multimeter to continuity. Check the terminals on the switch. You should get a beep indicating the switch is closed. If you don't get a beep, replace the switch. If you do get a beep, check the wiring and the plug on the circuit board. If the blocked exhaust error doesn't appear until after the blower starts, check for restrictions in the exhaust pipe, exhaust elbow, condensation drain, or the outside termination. Remove the exhaust elbow clean out and make sure there's no debris inside. Replace the cap tightly. Also check for excessive equivalent length. Refer to the installation manual for pipe size, length, and maximum number of elbows. If there's no blockage in the exhaust pipe, elbow, condensation drain, or outside termination, but you still get a blocked exhaust error, replace the blocked exhaust pressure switch. A blocked air intake error can be caused by a restriction in the intake pipe, high wind conditions, or a faulty air intake pressure switch. Clear the fault by pressing disable, then enable. If the error comes back before the blower starts, the blocked air intake pressure switch may be disconnected or is faulty. Make sure the connections are clean and tight. Set your multimeter to continuity. Check the terminals on the switch. You should get a beep indicating the switch is closed. If you don't get a beep, replace the switch. If you do get a beep, check the wiring and the plug on the circuit board. If the blocked intake error doesn't appear until after the blower starts, check for restrictions in the intake pipe, intake air connections, and the outside termination. Also check for excessive equivalent length. Refer to the installation manual for pipe size, length, and maximum number of elbows. If there are no blockages in the air intake pipe, but you still get a blocked air intake error, replace the blocked intake pressure switch. A low gas pressure error can be caused by low gas pressure or a faulty low gas pressure switch. If the gas supply pressure is too low, the switch will open and you'll get a low gas pressure error. Clear the fault by pressing disable, then enable. If the fault comes back, check and make sure the gas supply pressure is correct. See the water heater's data plate for the minimum required gas supply pressure for this model. You'll need a gas pressure gauge or a manometer for this test. Turn off the gas supply. Open the needle valve inside the gas supply pressure test port one full turn only. Attach the hose from your gas gauge or manometer. Turn the gas supply back on and read the pressure. If the pressure is below the data plate specification, check for problems with the gas supply, such as closed valves upstream, a bad regulator, or too many appliances on the same supply line. If the pressure is above the minimum requirement, turn the gas supply off and close the needle valve. Then turn the gas supply back on. Now check the low gas pressure switch. The connection should be clean and tight. Using a multimeter set to continuity, check the terminals on the switch. You should hear a beep indicating the switch is closed. If you have the correct gas pressure and you still don't hear a beep, meaning the switch is still open, replace the low gas pressure switch. An ignition failure error occurs when the flame sensor rod does not detect flame. This could mean there is no flame or simply because the flame sensor rod didn't see it. Clear the fault by pressing disable, then enable. Watch the display. When the gas valve icon appears, look through the sight glass for a brief blue flame. If you see a brief blue flame, but the flame sensing rod didn't detect it, you'll get an ignition failure error. Check the flame sensing rod. Make sure the connections are clean and tight. Remove the flame rod and clean with steel wool. Check the insulator for soot or damage. Replace the flame rod if necessary. If you don't see a brief blue flame when the gas valve icon appears, that could mean an issue with the gas supply pressure. Make sure the gas valve electrical connections are clean and tight. You'll need a gas pressure gauge or a manometer for this next test. Shut off the gas supply. Set the enable-disable switch to disable. Open the needle valve inside the gas supply pressure test port one full turn only. Attach the hose from your gas gauge or manometer. Turn the gas supply back on and press enable. Purge gas by disconnecting the tube from the manometer or gas gauge and reconnect to eliminate a spike in the pressure reading. When the gas valve icon appears on the display, you should see a pressure drop at the gas supply, at least a ½ inch drop. If you don't see any pressure drop, or if you do see a pressure drop and you're still not seeing a flame, call technical support. Okay, what you just watched was the QR codes that are actually on the water heater. What we have, this is another special feature that we have on this water heater. We've got a QR code sticker, and what this QR code sticker does, it takes you can download an app on your smartphone. Let me see if I can get this one to work here. Go into apps. You see. I don't know. That's not my phone. It's right here.
Right here.
I got it right there.
Right there.
So you go into your QR code reader, and then what you'll do is you'll put it over the QR code sticker, and it should take it.
Back it up.
Back it up.
Click OK.
You click OK, and it's going to take you to a website. Now on this site, it has got a lot of different things, features on there. There's what it is full screen. It'll take you to this site here. You got the features and benefits. You've got, and on that it talks about what we talked about in the very beginning of today. It kind of goes into a little more detail about some things. You can also go back and find out about an installation checklist, which is great when you're in the field, when you're installing these water heaters. This way you can remember venting the gas supply. It gives you some tips about the condensation drain, electrical supply, the enable-disable switch, and as you go through that during the installation, you can check those off. Also, the troubleshooting section, which we just talked about. They're going to pull up all of those videos that we just played for you. So when you're in the field, you'll be able to see those videos if you're in front of the water heater and you might have an issue or something's, you need to know something about one of those codes that you might experience in the field. It's just a great tip. it's a great thing to have that's in the tool bag. I mean, it'll be on your smartphone. So, you know, there's also on the code itself, there's a web address. So if you don't have a QR code reader, you can go to that website, and it gives you the same thing. It's a link to that site. But these codes are on all of the MXIs that are out there in the field that are coming out now. So I encourage you to look at that. Just, you know, use your phone, go to that site, look at what we have to offer. But those videos that we just watched are on there. So
yeah, it's like having 24/7 technical support to a
exactly.
degree.
And, you know, that's about 80% of what you're going to see in regards to this water heater. So you're going to understand about 80% of the things that you might experience when you're going out in the field. If you experience something that's not on that, we encourage you to call technical support. And, you know, the numbers are on the actual on the website, and you can email or call them. All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is the control. The control itself, we're gonna kind of walk through there. Kevin, we talked about how easy it is. Let's kind of navigate the control and go through it and see what it has to offer.
Okay, well, first I put it into a fault condition.
Right.
That way the blower and stuff wouldn't be trying to come on and people could hear. But the first thing I want to show you, this is key for you and your business. This will actually drive service to you. This center button, you're going to push and hold it for about 20 seconds. And what this is going to allow you to do is put your actual business information in there. So when the unit goes into an error code, it will say, like this one says blocked intake. Once you put your business information in there, you're going to have to change show contact information to yes, because that is set at no from the factory. And then show the contact name. And you're going to press select. So you can use the up and down arrows to change the letters. And once you're where you want it to be, you're going to move over. Oh, too far. So we wanted to go and then we're moving on over to the next. And all you're going to do is just use those up and down keys.
So you put in somebody's name.
Put in, and you have to always hit update, because if you don't hit the update key, it will not take the information.
Okay.
All right. And then the same thing for the phone number.
Mm-hmm.
So you would select, you're going to push the up and down buttons. So let's say it is over to Hawaii. We're going to do 808. And then you keep going on over and then hit the update. So when the unit goes into that fault condition, as we just stated, you know, it's actually going to say the fault, and then it's going to say contact.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So basically, it's the new generation label. We actually had cases when I worked in commercial tech support where they're like, you keep sending different people out. Where no, it was competitive contractors coming in, and they were actually changing the information actually in the screen. So.
Yeah, because it'll show the error, and it'll say call Joe's Plumbing.
That's right.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
So the next thing we're going to look at is we're going to just go through the menu. So the general stuff, let's show them how to change the set point. Let's say we need 180 degrees because we're in a restaurant. All right, so we're going to click change. And then you're just going to push and hold the button until it goes to the desired temperature that you would like it to be. And again, you have to hit update.
You always have to hit update, or it'll forget it.
Yeah, if you don't hit update, it will not, you know, retain any of the information that you just put into the control. The differential, it comes from the factory set at 8. Let's say you want it coming on quicker.
So is the differential is what the temperature in the tank has to drop before it's going to start back up?
That's right.
Okay. So, and from the factory it comes at 8. Is that a good setting? I mean, would there be a situation where you would want it a little bit, you know, higher?
Well, let's say you're in the restaurant application. If you're in a restaurant application, obviously you got to have really, really precise temperature control. Right. So, you know, you would want to take it all the way down to 2. But let's say this was an apartment complex, and you know you had it set to 130. You want it to come on by the time it falls to 110 because that's still usable hot water. Right. Well, in the apartment complex, it's going to be more beneficial to you to set it all the way up to 20 because that's more less cycles on the heater,
Less wear and tear.
less wear and tear. You're going to get a longer lifespan out of the components.
Okay.
So it's really dependent upon the application.
Okay.
So let's hit update. And then our tank temperature is what we're actually just seeing based off of air temperature and stuff like that right now, because we don't have any water in this tank.
Yeah, this tank is would not hold water very well at all.
All right.
And, you know, before we move on, this is the helical heat exchanger, what we talked about. We kind of waited till we came over here to show you. We were explaining how the heat transfers into the water. There's that helical heat exchanger. It's glass lined on the outside and the inside.
That's right.
And those flue gases go down, make that bend come back up, and then they're going to spiral around all the way till we terminate at the bottom. And that's a pretty long coil, isn't it?
Well, yeah, like I said, on your standard 199 model, which is typically that's your biggest seller, you've got 40 feet of 2.5-inch pipe.
Yeah, that's good.
So let's say tank probe offset. What this guy's for is, let's say you're in an application where you have some line losses, especially in a restaurant. You have it set to 180, and you're only getting to, let's say, 178.
Right.
Well, what you can do is you can press, yes, I know we have no water.
It's telling us we have no water.
It's trying to fire again.
That's all right. Keep going. You're all right.
But let's say we want to change that tank probe offset.
Uh-huh.
So we want it to overshoot 2 degrees because we're only really getting 178 out.
Right.
We can hit update.
We have to do it again.
Have to do it again.
Change.
Have to hit update. And now it's going to overshoot that temperature by a couple of degrees.
Yeah,
to make
because
up
you're losing line loss. You're losing temperature in the line, and so we're going to have it come out a little bit hotter to accommodate for that line loss.
And you can do up to 5 degrees. So that basically gives you a little fudge factor built in there, you know, for temperature.
Okay, so that was in the temperature setting. Now we're going to go to heater status?
Heater status, yes. This is going to tell you the position of every safety and every monitoring point on the heater. It's almost like having a built-in test meter built into the control.
That's great.
Which right now we're in a fault condition because I intentionally put it that way. But it tells you the ECO contact position. It also tells you the position of all the safeties in the prover switches. Tells you if the igniter if it was sparking, the gas valve's on, and if flames detected, which obviously this heater has no gas and it's not running, so we're not going to have any flame detection.
But you can look at that while the heater's running and see what the status is on every part that we can.
That's right.
All the switches and that's good information.
All right, display settings. All right, what I would recommend, because every mechanical room that you guys have been in, I'm sure is well lit and you can see it very well.
Yeah, of course. They're all that way.
Yeah, not really that way.
Yeah.
Always change this because it doesn't come from the factory as always on. You know, it could be a 60-second or a 30-second delay. I would just recommend turning it to always on. That way, if you have to come back to that job, that back screen is going to be lit up. That way you can see the information in the display much better. So heater information. Elapsed time is the actual time that the units had power to it, which we set this up about this time yesterday, so that makes sense.
Yep. 21 hours.
All right. Total cycle counts the actual time that the unit's actually been cycled through or it's tried to run, okay? The CCB version, what that does is that gives you the actual rev. And then none of that's not user level or install level stuff. But one of the things it can tell you, if you know the actual total cycle count, we can tell if something's wrong with the piping or if the
They're
units
undersized
or oversized. So that may be the only time we would actually ask you for that information, because we can basically do some arithmetic based off the elapsed time and, you know, the actual cycle count and see how often it's actually cycling per hour and figure out if it's undersized or if there's a piping problem or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's good information, especially for the people, the call center, if you have to call in.
All right. So current fault, I pulled one of the wires off of the blower prover. So it's going to give us obviously a blower prover open, all right? But let's say, you know, you wanted to know more about that. You're on the job site, you need to know what that means. You would hit advanced, and it's going to give you the legal disclaimer that says, you know, if you're not a licensed professional, you know, walk away from the unit. But after you get past that, it gives you in very plain text English what it's seeing. The control has detected an open blower prover pressure switch during operation. So the blower prover will close its contacts on a pressure rise. So in other words, it's looking for that normally open set of contacts, and it's looking to see that the fan actually closed them. And then it gives you the possible causes from most likely to least likely. The sensing tube that goes from the fan to the switch could be, could be knocked off, or there could be some debris in there.
And that's what you watched on the video kind of does the same thing, pretty much the same text as well on some of the, especially the list of most likely to least likely.
That's right. And then it takes you through there, in which that's all I did was pull one of the wires off the switches. So, and then it says the blower, maybe it's not running. Obviously, if the fan doesn't come on, it's never going to take those contacts from open to closed, so you're going to get a blower prover error.
Right.
And then the least likely that it's going to tell you is it could be a bad blower prover switch, which you would just need a digital manometer, and you need to know what the make-break point of that switch is to make that final determination. So let's go back. So let's go into the fault history. No water. Obviously, the reason it keeps going into no water is just because we have no water in this tank.
Obviously.
And that's, and then blower prover 20 minutes ago. So this will take, and it will tell us all of the error codes, and it also tells you the last time they occurred.
How many of error codes? How many error
It'll
codes?
hold up to 9 for 30 days.
Okay.
All right. So after that,
it just knocks off the most, the one that's been on there the longest.
It'll knock off the one that's been on there the longest, and it takes and it pushes it into fault occurrence.
Okay.
All right. And here's where we discussed earlier, where it will hold the 255.
Right.
Every potential fault this unit can go into, it will store it up to 255. After that, it doesn't have any more memory built into the board. But at that point, I think at 255 faults on the common stuff like blocked intake, blocked exhaust, low gas, we should know at that point, we've got a problem with venting the gas or something else, like the lower temperature probe. So, and all the powered anode fails and stuff like that are because we don't have any water in this tank. So, but it keeps and it stores every single one of them. And then after that, if let's just say, you remember the changes we made to the temperature and stuff like that, and let's just say you kind of throw your hands up and you're saying, I want to start from scratch. I want to take it back to the way it shipped at the factory.
Right.
You would hit the restore factory defaults. It's going to give you the option, are you sure? And then you're going to click yes. And let's go back up to our temperature display.
Then we should be
back to 120, and
there
we
we
have
are.
our 8-degree differential. So that's the basic rundown of the menu.
Yeah.
Let's say it's probably a lot of times when you get a training like this, it's 4, 5, 6 months later when you see the heater.
Yeah.
If you go to our website at hotwater.com, there's actually a virtual version of this that you can actually go through before you actually go out to the job site and refamiliarize yourself with the control.
Yeah. We really encourage you to go. It's at hotwater.com. Go to the commercial gas section. You can find the link if you go to the commercial gas section, and just walk around it, look around it, and get familiar with it, because whenever you go out to the job site, especially if you got a call and you're about to go out there and you're gonna, and ahead of time, kind of go to that website and take a look at it.